In traditional web design, we usually create a style.css file and add various styles for the appearance of the page. But with Tailwind CSS, things are much simpler. The biggest advantage of Tailwind CSS is that we can design directly in HTML without the need for a separate style file. This means we no longer need to write detailed CSS rules for each element. For example, if you want to add color, border, and shadow to a button, you can do it very quickly using just a few classes. In this video, for those who have not used Tailwind CSS before or have not fully grasped its usage, we will discuss the easy and fast method of this framework in detail. Thus, you will learn how to make faster and more impressive designs with less code than traditional methods. On the left side, you will see index.html. On the right side, you will be able to see the results of the codes we wrote here instantly. First, let's write the basic HTML5 codes for our index page. Let's write a title like this. I'm writing Tailwind CSS because the main topic of this video will be on the logic of Tailwind CSS. First of all, I will show how we did it before. We used to create a styled CSS file and call that file here and edit the appearance of the theme through that file. Or alternatively, we can do it this way. We write the style codes between the style tags and make it affect this page again. I will write a sample code about what we did before. For example, I will assign a color to the background. Let's assign the color gray to the background color of body. When I save and examine this file, you will see that the background is gray. Think of dozens, possibly hundreds of lines of code like this. Think of style code. This was the style coding we used to do before. This was the logic at least. But now with Tailwind CSS, we're going to make it much simpler. We will still have a CSS file, but the process will be a little different. But instead of creating a style file, let's call this CSS file from CDN. And in this process, we will need to visit TailwindCSS.com a lot. I'll show you why in a moment. When we come to this page and go to the installation section under Getting Started, we will see a page like this. On this page, I'm going to use the Play CDN section in this tutorial. I'm scrolling down the page. Look, Tailwind CSS's CDN has added a CDN among the scripts. I'm going to copy it and paste it over the head closing. Now I'm going to save the file. There's nothing on the page right now. I remind you again and again, our goal is to create a specific design without CSS coding, without style files. The logic is this. Again, we will add a background like we just did. I come to this page. On the left side under the Background tab, I find Background Color. I come to this page. On the left side under the Background tab, I find Background Color. When I click on that, you will see some values. These values are predefined values. For example, when we type BG black, we need to understand that the background will be black. When we look at the Properties section, you can also see the result when we type BG black. As RGB code, 0 values correspond to the color black. You can see an example on the right side. So when I type BG black, I'm actually typing this, and this gives me the color black as a result. We can use this in the background, for example. See, this is already a class, and since we want to give the background to the body tag, I write body class and I give the name of the class on this page in quotes. So I write BG black. I save it and see if we have written any style code, but despite that, it gave me the background as black. Now let's write a text. I'm going to write a text between the tags P. Let's write the text of lorem ipsum. When I save it and look at it, it shows up as black here because we didn't give it any color value. Because the default color of Windows or operating systems is black. Let's say we want to make it white. As we just did, we need to write P class and give a value in quotes. If we don't know what to give, which we don't know at the beginning, I come here and go to the text color page. When I came to this page, we wanted to give white. The value of white is 2155. We already know this, and this is the class we need to write. When you examine this page, you will encounter other things. For example, here he has given a color value. This color value looks better than white. Let's try white first. What did we copy? We copied text white, and when I saved it, look, our text is now white, even though we didn't write any CSS code. So what values are there by default? I click on the Show All Classes button and I can see all the saved values, all the color values on the system. This means that I can reach these results by typing these classes. Let's give an example that means orange. When we type text, orange 50, the value 50 means that there will be a light-colored orange here, and these values continue as multiples of 100. It continues as 100, 200, 300, and we can see examples up to 900, up to 950, and sometimes even up to 900. For example, we want to write an average orange value. Let's write text orange 500. This is our text. When I save this, look, this is how I can get the orange color. The examples we are doing now are very simple. But with this knowledge, you can prepare a WordPress theme without touching CSS codes, for example. Now with these basics, we will make a search box. It may seem very complicated at first, but once you learn it, you will realize that it is much simpler than using CSS. I want to make the background gray, and I want this to be the starting color, but you don't enter a number value only in white and black, because those are the most extreme colors. But to enter intermediate values, as I just mentioned, you can enter different values from 50 to 950. For example, if I want an average gray value, I can enter 500 or 600 here, and when I save it, look, the background is gray like this. If I do 800, the background will be a little darker. It will be closer to black, and if I do 300, I will encounter a light gray. I do 700 and I have a gray color like this. For example, what we were going to do was to make a search box, so let's write our codes between the form tags and add a button. When I save and look at it, it gives me such a result by default because I did not enter any class value. Now we will improve it with Tailwind CSS and make it look much more beautiful and professional. First, let's center it horizontally and vertically. There are some values I will add to the body. I can do what I want through these values. Since I want to center horizontally, I enter the justify center value. Look, I save it. You don't see anything because we didn't write flex at the beginning. When I write flex and save it, I center the page. Now let's look at the vertical center. The equivalent of vertically centered is item center. If you know CSS literally, you will be able to make sense of it. When you save and look at it, it is not vertically centered because I need to add one more code. I need to add it as minimum height screen. When I add this, I will be vertically centered. And when we examine the body tag, we gave the background a gray value. We averaged horizontally and vertically. And we didn't write any CSS code to do all this. By the way, you can find all this information on this site. You should definitely take a look at this site to learn what's what and how it works. TailwindCSS.com. And I'm going to move on faster. Let's add a placeholder here. I'm typing placeholder search for the text that will appear in the white area by default when the search box appears. Since this is a search box and I've organized our button in this way. Let's make some style edits on the input. I'm adding the class property. The background will be white. Right now the background is white by default, but let's specify it anyway. We can see this more clearly by zooming in a bit more. The corners are angular, as you can see. We can change it like this. If I type rounded and save it, you can see that the corners are oval. You can also make distinctions like small corners, big corners. For example, if we write rounded SM, meaning small, the corners will be seen as less pixels. If I type large, you will see larger corners, as you can see. If you don't type anything, it will give you the average value. Instead of the search button, let's add an arrow instead of text. So we will take our example a little bit further. I'm going to use SVG. I'm saving this. Look, we see an arrow like this. We will see this as a button. Actually, the logic is this. We will write the codes of what we want to do here. For example, the search part is too far to the left. I want to take it a little more to the right. To give space, we normally use the padding value, that is, the letter P. I specify how much space I want to give with right. And as you can see, it gave us equal space from top, bottom, right, and left. If we wanted to give margin, I would change it to M. If I wanted to give space only at the top, we normally use the padding top value. I'm going to write the initials of padding top here. Look, right now it just gave the space to the top. Let's speed up a little more. I'm going to add a div tag on the form and I'm going to close this div at the bottom of the form. We did this for this, because we need to put it in the arrow in a moment. So we need to give the div relative, and then we need to give the button some classes to let the button in. I'm going to give the background of the button a white color. I'm going to save it every time so we can directly see what these values do. I want to make the button completely round. What's the word for round? Rounded. If I want to make it completely round, I add the value full. Look, it's completely round. We will give the value absolute so that we can get the input. I want to leave a space of 8 values from the right side. I write right 8. I left 8 spaces from the right side. Now I want to center the input, so I need to leave a space of 50% from the top. I write this as top one divided by 2 to you. Look, when I write this, if I change the background, we will see it more clearly. I made the color of the background gray. I add the value transform and add the value translate to 1 divided by 2. So we have centered vertically. Now let's make a change when it comes to the button. For example, let's change the color. What did we say to the background? We said it should be gray with a value of 500. I take this, copy it here, and think about what I want to do. I want the gray color to get a little darker when hovering over it, so I make it 700, but I also add the hover part. I add it by typing hover. The logic here is, when you type hover colon, the mouse will think the next value is mouse hover. Look, I save this, and when we hover over it, the background gets darker. At this stage, I can also change the color of the arrow. The color of the arrow is normally white, but I want it to be black. I want it to be white when hovering over it, so if I make it as hover text white, when it hovers over it, both the background will change and the color of the arrow will change. I wanted to show you the logic of hover, but I will do it like this. I write hover opacity 80 here. The reason for doing this is that when I hover over it, it will be a bit transparent. I'm also deleting the background. I don't want a background, I just want a button. I want an opacity of 60 when I hover over it, so this is how it looks. Right now, it's very inside because we made the right 8. I'm going to make the right 4. I want to provide a little more. I'll make it 2, and that way it looks good right now. If we understand the logic in general, I'm going to make a search box that looks a little bit better. I'm going to give input the value rounded full instead of rounded. See? So it's fully rounded. Search is too far to the left. I want to make it a little bit more. We gave the value padding 2. We want 2 values of space in each direction, but I want it to give 4 value space from the left. I will enter the value padding left. And as you can see, we have a more beautiful search box. In general, this is the logic of Tailwind CSS. Let's say I want to give a shadow to input. I come to the input tag. And what does shadow mean here? It means shadow in English. I write shadow here and save it. The background is dark, so it was not clearly seen. I'm going to lighten the color of the background a little bit. I change the background gray value to 200. Look, we see the gray color in the background now. It was like this before. I added a shadow and it was like this. I want to add a shadow with fewer levels. I use the value small. If I want a bigger shadow, I can enter the value large. When I save, we get a bigger shadow. You can see all of these values in Tailwind CSS in much more detail. You will also be able to learn about Tailwind CSS by following our tutorials on this subject. I will show one last thing. Let's say we want to give an outline. That is the CSS equivalent of border. Again, I want to give it to the input. What is the equivalent of an outline in CSS? Border. I'm writing border here. Let's see what kind of result it will give us. If you noticed, there was a small thickening because it gave a white border by default. I want to change the color of the border. What were the colors? For example, let's give a dark gray color. In the background, if you remember, we gave the value gray 800. If I add border to the beginning of this is how we specify what we give color to. Therefore, we give the border a gray color with a value of 800. Yes, this is the basic logic of Tailwind CSS. In this video, I tried to show the most basic use of Tailwind CSS, and I tried to show it through an application, through a search box. I assure you that making a website or a theme with Tailwind CSS is much more enjoyable and much faster than normal CSS, traditional CSS. I hope this video was useful.